Welcome for those who are watching on live stream, and this is our last meeting for the calendar year, so a little bit of luck, we'll race our way through that. Do we have any apologies other than Barry and Grant? Doesn't seem to be. Any declaration of interest? There being none, this is great. Nobody for the public forum. Oh, sorry, I need to move the apologies.
Move.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Already.
Carried. And on to the public forum, we have nobody, so that's great as well. So just working our way through the agenda, and just to give you a heads up that tab 10 that we've got on the agenda, which is the honorarium for mana whenua, I'm putting that right till the end of our open session, which allows for the two mana reps to withdraw so that we can discuss their the honorarium for the year going forward. So just a little bit slightly out of order, but just working our way through. And we've got some major late items as well, so you'll see them come in. Minutes of Infrastructure Committee on the 6th of December, the 13th of December for the Community Wellbeing Committee, and we have the addendum to the Government Statement Report as well. So we just want to work our way through, and the first item is the minutes of the Bluff Community Board. Somebody like to
Move those.
move those? Leslie, thank you. Thank you, Alan.
Second.
Yes, I just said those there.
Didn't move though. I'm happy to move that the
yeah.
major late items
Yeah,
are
thank you,
accepted.
Councillor.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Leslie. Yes, right.
Electricity as well.
Goes into PE.
But you still need to receive it.
Okay, yep, sorry. Remiss of me, we also have the contract to supply electricity, and which is a document that needs to go into public exclude. Thank you.
That was included in the motion.
Seconded.
Yep, thank you. So we've got that. Excellent. So just working our way through the first issue, which is the issue of the minutes of the Bluff Community Board inaugural meeting on Monday the 28th of November. Somebody like to speak to that?
It's been moved and seconded that we receive them.
Yep, we have. All right. No discussion on that.
Leslie and Alan.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the meeting of council held on the 29th of November.
Moved, Your Worship. Sorry, Mayor Clark.
Seconded, Your Worship.
Yeah, thank you, you too. This is getting a bit routine. Any discussion around those? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Long-term plan development update, which is on the Tuesday, the 20th of December. Any discussions for this? Oh, Rhiannon, thank you.
Kia ora koutou. So I'll take the report as read. This report is the first in a series that you'll receive as we work towards the development of the 2024 to 2034 long-term plan. I think the main point that I'll just make in opening is that all elements of the long-term plan remain draft until the plan is formally adopted towards the end of June 2024. However, it is very useful to, as we go through, just confirm elements of the plan so that the teams working across the various work streams in developing the plan for you can progress in their elements, whether that's the financial strategy or the infrastructure strategy or the asset plans that sit behind. So this report is really bringing forward to you the draft vision, draft mission, strategic priorities and draft community outcomes for your consideration and discussion, and then also a schedule for workshops for next year, which shows those elements of strategic interest that Council can work through as it develops the next long-term plan.
Thanks, Rhiannon. Just from my perspective, as we look into some of these workshops this year, I'd like us to continue the option of still live streaming some of them. So you'll be aware of that. Thank you. Any discussion? Rangi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is about the continuation of the LTP mission statement, which is Waihopai.
Yep.
Now, it says to leave in good order. Now, the reason I'm querying this is because I don't believe the city has left in good order what it started with. If you look at the reclaiming of the estuary through creating a tip, you look at even looking at the Waihopai River, which is the estuary where the tip was, and then you look at the northern banks of the Waihopai River down Prestonville, and it's a collection ground graveyard for vehicles. Now, I don't think we're leaving this in good order. So I'm just querying it. I'm not doubting that that could be the correct translation for Waihopai, but to have it as a mission statement, and really, shouldn't it be what we're actually doing? And so far, I don't think we are leaving this place in a good order as both
Would you have a go at that, Rhiannon?
If I would respond just with some advice around a mission statement. So while the vision statement talks about what an organisation is aiming to achieve kind of in the external environment, so the city in this case for the Invercargill City Council, the mission statement speaks very much to how the organisation will work internally towards achieving that vision and the values that it will live up to. I think there are many experienced governance people around this table, and often what you want for your vision and mission statement are statements that are aspirational. They are speaking to the values that a group has. Usually with aspirational statements, there will be some gap between the reality and where you are aiming to get towards. Otherwise, they wouldn't have that stretch, which is what you are wanting. But equally, it is important that this group considers that they are realistic, and it is what you are as a group working towards. So I guess that would be my advice as an officer, and just also reflecting as a staff member that the mission statement has been used quite extensively by the executive leadership team and the management team, and it does resonate to a certain extent with us as staff in terms of supporting you with the vision that you're wanting to achieve for the city.
So I'll come to you in a minute, Tom. So Rhiannon, we'll have an opportunity as we work through the workshops to address some of these issues. Because I mean, some of these have been raised before. That's not to say that they're not where we want to go, but there will be opportunities to look at the confirm the the vision and some of the other statements like the Waihopai sort of better than it was, or whatever.
So
Leave in good order.
To reiterate, nothing is finalised until you adopt, but equally, as we go through, it's very useful to the process to actually have the discussion and confirm that in principle you as a group are in favour of the general direction. That enables all the staff then to work and prepare the other parts. So it would be appropriate to discuss it to some level now, unless you want to defer that to a certain later point.
Well, I think it's fair to assume we've had some discussion before and we didn't resolve it. So I just thought maybe in our first workshop that would be a more ideal place to give you a steer on the way forward potentially.
Absolutely happy to be directed by you, Mayor, but obviously the meetings now, we're bringing forward everything for discussion.
Sure.
Given that workshops are very much in that preparatory phase.
Yep. I guess what I'm suggesting is, and I'm open to hearing views from others as well, is that once you start interfering with a mission statement, which is an overarching thing, or your vision, you don't do that lightly, because there's comms implications of doing that. And to do it right now, I think would leave some councillors unprepared about what they thought that going forward. So I'm just checking the ability to do it maybe at the first workshop that we come into in the new year. There is. Okay, Tom.
I won't speak on that subject. I originally intended to, Mayor, but I'll just leave it. It's unusual, I think, to have a strategic plan for council which does not recognise the need to look after the safety and well-being of staff. And there's absolutely nothing in this that does. And I think as we you know, if you look at F5F, for example, you know, ensuring council leadership and delivery is credible and effective, building community trust and engagement. I think a separate part of that, and should be itemised separately, is the fact that we do need to, so say, look after the safety and well-being of our staff.
Yep.
It's completely missing, I think, at the moment.
Yep. And I'll come back to that in a minute, Tom, because we did have some discussion this morning about that. So there may be an amendment to those things for Rhiannon's perspective. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to speak in support of Waihopai to leave in good order as a very good aspirational statement for this council, but I'm comfortable to defer that to our first workshop.
Sure. Darren.
I was just wondering if the health and well-being of staff was more an operational matter and not necessarily part of an annual plan or a long-term plan. But happy to take advice on that.
I'll come back to you in a minute, Rangi. Just for your benefit, Rhiannon, we had some considerable discussion at Risk and Assurance this morning around the issue of health, safety and well-being of staff. So that's why we've got some of this issue coming forward. Rangi.
Look, I can't believe this is being deferred to a workshop, because we can't make decisions in a workshop. It clearly says up there that it's being moved, seconded to confirm these things. So this is pretty finite, what we're doing here today. I mean, sorry, I'm a man of logic, and to me, to leave in good order, please prove to me, given the examples that I've just given, that we are leaving this place in good order, considering what we did to the Waihopai estuary with, you know, a landfill and other things like that. So just, sorry, to me it's, you know, I'd like to actually have a mission statement that actually meant something that I can relate to, not some words that you carve on a plaque and sit in front of you and make you feel good.
Well, two things with that. From my perspective, I guess one is that vision is already in our plan, and the mission statement is as well. I guess you're talking about whether we can deliver it or not. It's another issue again, as opposed to is that the goal we head towards. And if you wish, I'll put it to the vote the way it is. But I guess it doesn't give some of your colleagues a chance to think through whether we have an appetite to changing our goals and visions at this stage, or whether we just continue on the way we are. Because from my perspective, it's not really the goal itself, is whether you can achieve it's the real issue. And you've raised a number of examples where we're not doing too well in that area, but that doesn't mean we can't improve. Yes, sorry, Darren.
I guess it's important to remember, as another person of logic, that a mission statement is aspirational, so it's forward-looking. It's not looking back. This is the annual plan, not the annual report. And if that shapes our decision-making, so if our mission is to make sure the decisions that we are making are to leave in good order, then I'm quite happy for it as a mission statement. If we fail in that objective, then that's something that might come back through an annual report or an election.
Tom, coming back to your issue, we've got some recommendations at the front end which you could add to if that was your desire, but also in the report you'll notice on page 21, I think, I'll get to it in a minute. At the bottom of page 3 of the report and 20 of board books, it talks about the long-term plan having some strategic challenges for us, and that could well be a place where we added the health and safety and well-being of staff in there as an alternative. A hushly silence, potentially, but that would take some work from Rhiannon to do that, as opposed to me moving some amendments to the recommendations. Alan.
Oh, did you see me?
I can see you.
I was just thinking, in agreement with Councillor Pottinger, I sort of agree with him, but the things that he's referring to were a long time before our time. And so we're talking about going forward, but there's nothing to say that we couldn't, at a workshop, perhaps look at some way of perhaps remedying some of those things that have been done in the past that we possibly could, by way of like a visual boundary or something, like a tree lines or something like that. I'm not sure, so that could be a discussion for a workshop, perhaps.
Sure. Heaps of people. Alex?
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, Mayor Clark. I was really going to tautoko what Councillor Ludlow said. I think it's really clear that all of us heard a lot of things during our campaign period, and a lot of it was centred around the city with heart and restarting the heart and the vibrancy that we've got in the inner city and what we're working towards with 1225. So I really don't think that the public rhetoric has shifted away from he ngāko aroha. So I think it's definitely something that we should be continuing on with. But looking internally, like Councillor Ludlow said, it's not retrospective. We can't look at what has happened and go, oh no, we haven't done our job. What we can only do is look forward to the future and set a good example of what we want our team members to be aspiring to. So I really would like us to confirm those today and give them a really good solid steer as to what we should be aspiring to.
Yep. Emma.
Yeah, because language is one of my things. This to leave in good order is an active, future-focused remark, and I think whilst acknowledging, and I have been fairly vocal on this, the damage that has been done in the past, this is not a passive statement. This is an active, looking forward and continuing thing. It goes beyond my lifetime and to the future for our mokos. So I don't deny the damage done, but I don't think that stops us being active about our intentions going forward. And this is, as others have said, aspirational. This is not a finite.
Thank you. Trish?
Thank you.
Yes, I basically agree with what Alex said. I also think that that phrase is something that we can use to reflect on when we're doing things. How will this help us leave this in good order? So it should be a measure that we can use when we're discussing things.
Yeah, Tom.
Mayor, I think it is actually worthy of debate. I mean, I like the explanation that Evelyn just gave. Actually, that almost made me not put my hand up. But what I was going to say is that, if councils from the 1860s had accepted that as their mission statement, then this area would still be marsh and bush. And I prefer something that's got some improvement word in it, rather than simply assuming that we're going to maintain the status quo. People, I think, elect us to improve their lives, not simply to protect what we already have. So I actually like Evelyn's explanation, so I wouldn't have a problem with leaving it, but I would just like somehow to bring in the concept of improvement.
And while you got your microphone pulled up, Tom, would you like to move an amendment to 5 to insert G, which was some outcome, some draft strategic priority for health and safety and well-being of staff?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I agree with the comment that is an operationally focused thing. I am grateful to hear the Deputy Mayor refer to that, and I would appreciate it if we could have that discussion about that being something that we spend more time on at the council level, for the opportunity to indicate that to all staff. But the long-term plan is a document that the community looks at for direction on how the council is going to spend its time, allocate its resources. And I'm not sure that that's the right place for the health, safety and well-being of the staff who work here. The health, safety and well-being of the community I could embrace, but for the staff feels like a very narrow focus in a bigger strategic document. And I think that to draw on the Deputy Mayor's previous experience and contrast it with this is not a strategic plan for governance to the organisation or for itself. It is for the community on the future direction for the city. And I think that's the comparison that perhaps if we could find a different place for that conversation of health, safety and wellbeing, I think that would be a really helpful, constructive conversation between this table and the staff.
So, Tom, for your benefit, one of those places might be the chief executive's KPIs.
I'd appreciate it if it was somewhere publicly, Your Worship. Sorry, Mayor Clark.
Yeah.
Because I think that actually goes to the very heart of what I understand to be called psychological safety. Actually, if you are to refer to the discussion about health and safety, then it starts at this table and its interaction with the people who report to you, me and the officers who come. And so I'm really grateful to the Deputy Mayor for wanting to insert it here. I'm not sure it's the right place, but I'd really like to work with him to find a place, because I think it is a very helpful signal to everybody. And I'd like it to be public for that reason.
Yeah, it'd be useful to debate it, separately. I think its absence actually makes a statement of itself. That's the concern I have. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, could I suggest to you that you take Rhiannon's advice that nothing is confirmed until the LTP is confirmed? I am conscious that management has undertaken this morning to come back to you with a roadmap on some matters, and I think that might be an opportunity to have a good discussion about the Deputy Mayor's aspirations in this regard and how to make that reflected in our documents. That provides a really good signpost to all staff.
Yep, thank you for that, Tom. All right, would somebody like to move all the recommendations, if that's appropriate?
Yes, Mayor Clark.
I'll just take it as a given that you're doing all of them. Thank you, Leslie. Yeah.
Seconded.
Any further discussion around those recommendations?
There may have been an indication Councillor Crackett wanted to say something.
Oh, sorry. No, that's okay. You're right? Yep, thank you. Okay, I'll put all those motions, all 8 of them. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to the Community Wellbeing Fund and Committee Terms of Reference update. Rhiannon again.
So this paper speaks to a procedural matter that we're just bringing to Council to request an amendment to the Community Wellbeing Fund Committee Terms of Reference. This really relates to the matter of quorum and ensuring the smooth functioning of the committee. I'll take the report as read and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Getting late in the year, you've worn them all out.
Happy to move the recommendation.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
That's what Trish might have.
Yeah, that's.
We're all looking at you, Councillor Boyle.
I beg your pardon. I was just having an aside. I don't need to speak to this. I'm quite happy with what's been put there.
Okay.
But I'm happy to move it if that's what you're waiting
Yep.
for.
And seconded by Leslie, thank you. No further discussion? There's none. I'll put all 3 at the same time. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Michael, wherever you are. So the amendment to the government statement 2022-25.
Good afternoon, kia ora everybody. Thank you, Mayor Clark. So as I've said earlier, the governance statement is a living document and needs to be continually updated. This is the latest round of updates and appoints people to the various joint committees, portfolios and organisations who have requested requested a council representative be placed. In my report, we also indicated the need for 3 additional members to be appointed to the Centre City Heritage Subcommittee. Councillor Soper has been appointed as the chair of that committee once the governance statement amendment is adopted, but there would need to be 3 more members of that committee so that Councillor Soper has something to chair. And I believe Councillor Kett was also going to bring information back from Age Concern regarding whether it was 1 or 2 councillors who are able to be appointed, and I believe he will be able to speak to that. And then there is the addendum, which is the major late item, which has only just come in as a request from Active Southland for a council representative. So if you're comfortable, Mr. Mayor, that makes sense to me to get it all done in one appointment round. And with that, we would then make the changes to the governance statement and it would become live.
So we need three members over and above the chair.
Yes.
Okay. Peter, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll put my name forward. I was on that last term.
Any other volunteers?
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And one more. Alan. Excellent. Good man. So we've got those 3 nominations, Michael.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you.
So next up would be the comment from Age Concern. Councillor Kett, I think, was going to report back on whether it could be 1 or 2 people appointed.
Yep.
Yeah, it's only one, Mr. Mayor, only one person.
Right. So I think the current appointment was Councillor Kett himself, but Councillor Stewart had indicated an interest, so maybe he has made the alternate.
Yep.
That seems to be the solution to me.
That would be fine. Well, Peter's older than Barry, so Age Concern.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Succession planning.
Yeah, but
Maybe
yeah, bit of succession planning, just in case.
I think Barry may be on the pension next year.
Yeah. No, he's got a way to catch up, though, hasn't he?
6 months.
So you got those, Michael?
I have, thank you.
Thank you.
And the last one is the major late item, which is tab 14, the addendum to the governance statement report for an appointee to the Active Southland Committee Fund. It was an organisation that used to be managed through this council, but it has been sent out to a trust, and they've now asked for a representative.
Yeah, there's a conflict here, isn't there, Alex, as an Active Southland trustee?
Here's my hand to declare such conflict. I will not partake in any
Thank you.
discussion pertaining to that.
So are you involved at the moment?
Pardon?
Are you involved at the moment?
I am a trustee of Active Southland, so
Can you give us a brief update on what the role involves?
I can shorten it for you.
Yes, thank
and
you.
register an interest.
Yes.
It used to be the Active Communities Fund that we administered, as Michael said. So we handed it over to Active Southland. I'm familiar with their process. I'm happy to.
So you want a councillor as actor?
I'm happy to nominate Councillor Ludlow if he is indicating
I promise to be
interest.
active.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Any other suggestions about the nomination? Any others? Welcome to the fold then, Darren. You got that, Michael?
I have got that. Thank you, Mr.
Have
Mayor.
that. So we've got 4 recommendations there, the front end of that, and the nominations that we've now got. So I'll put all 4 of them together. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, Evelyn.
I have a question. On page 32 of board books, which is page 35 of the governance, under portfolios, it says added names of councillors appointed to museum. That would be redundant, I would believe, because that's the SMAG board. What was the SMAG board?
Oh no, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'll just clarify that for Evelyn. That is pointing the portfolio leads, and that is Councillor Scout. Yep. Sorry, we could have clarified that. My apologies for any confusion.
Thank you.
So just on that issue of the portfolios, Michael, yet to make any appointment towards SIT, but certainly in the health area, Lucy has volunteered to chair that, and I think Ria, you want to be involved as well.
Yes.
So just acknowledging those 2 names, given that recent meeting I've had with the other mayors in Southland, they want a Southland-wide voice as opposed to an Invercargill voice. So it's probably going to take more than one person to get around some of these agencies that are in primary care. So this is very much a primary care voice as opposed to secondary care. So If there's no other objections or suggestions, happy to put those two names as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Added.
And on the issue of housing, it would be helpful to come back to that one as well. And I think Tom's got an active role there. More than one voice needed, or one person involved in that portfolio, do you think?
Mr. Mayor, I think I still need to understand exactly what's involved in that. I mean, there's been a number of things underway. Trudy and I have been, I've met a couple of times and we plan to meet every month.
Yeah.
I've had meetings with Bobby and Great South about it. I'm still trying to get a feeling for, just exactly what that work will be. I think once I understand that better, then I think it would be good to have that conversation.
Sure. And for your benefit, Michael, again, through the mayoral forum, there's a...
I must admit, Chair, through you, sorry, again, if I was looking for support at the moment, I'd probably look to Leslie so to help, and she's nodding. So, if you need another name, maybe you can...
Happy to have my name there.
Yeah. And I guess, again, Michael, this is being generated predominantly out of the state wanting to partner up with some other organisations, Kainga Ora, and but the other issue is that housing's always been very high up on the list of issues that Southland needs to resolve, a shortage of houses, and we just never seem to get any work done because it's too complicated. So whether we can draw some local expertise in it and look at the likes of Hastings, it's got a coalition going now between government, local body, iwi, and some private sector providers to build about 1,500 houses. So we might get a steer on potentially on that as well. Yep, thank you. And at this stage, I'll just sit on the SIT one at the moment because there's some politics around the transition phase across the new organisation that I'd like to help them with.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I've said earlier, this is a living document. We can continue to add names as the council desires.
Surely, thank you. So I've got 4 recommendations there. I'll just put them all in the one go. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposed? There is none. Carried. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Yes. And we've also got the addendum to the government statement as well. So there are two recommendations in there. Receive the report and appoint Councillor Lando to be an active person on the Active Communities Fund Committee. This I'd like to see. So I'll put those as well. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried.
I'm not challenging you to a race.
Yeah. Now, moving on to tab 11, before we deal with the issue of the honorarium for mana funeral reps. Who's speaking to that? Michael again.
Yes, me again. A nice report to round out the council year, setting your dates for the coming year, 2023, so that you have 2 options. We have option 1, which is the standard roll through of our council meetings through each month, and option 2 is something new to try and make council meetings slightly more user friendly for people, members who have, and members of staff as well, who have family members who may be at school holidays. So for the 3 term holidays, 1 week would be kept free of all council meetings, which would see 3 times a year a double up of council meetings. So it's generally 2 committees being held on the same day. So the options are available to councillors, but that was something that staff felt was something that was worth bringing to you for consideration. And as ever, I remain happy to answer any questions.
There being any questions?
Happy to promote the option that includes the family-friendly care of errant children.
Yep. Yep. Rangy.
Otherwise, we could bring them along to the meeting, and that'd fix them.
Just going
That's
back
torture.
back to back, would you still start at 3 or start at 1 or start at 2 or?
So it would at this stage it would be, I planned that we start at 3, but it would be subject to the likely workload of the committee meeting, of the agenda. If it was going to be a large meeting, then we would take advice and seek to start the meetings earlier. We generally have an idea of what's coming in our agendas in advance, so we would plan that if needed.
I mean, obviously, if you do have a big agenda, you do need a sizable break, and then into the next one rather than, I mean, we do 5-hour risk and assurance ones, but they do tend to hurt.
Yeah, it's not ideal practice.
And Michael, just from my perspective, with the going forward of the workshops as we lead into that middle period of the year when we adopt, it would be helpful to have a schedule for the workshops as well.
Yes, that will be forthcoming once this was the set piece.
Yeah, I
once that
understand
was done, everything can be populated from there. It will be populated into all of your calendars. Before, certainly the January, February, March ones before the end of the year, so you've got an idea of where they sit.
Yep. Just reflecting on what we did at the long-term plan a couple of years ago, we had a lot of workshops, and by the time we got to the end of them, and it was about 24 of them, we were struggling to get a quorum sometimes. So that's a reflection for those that are currently working as well, have full-time jobs. Having a whole series of them too close together or at the wrong time of day, we don't get the buy-in.
Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, I understand that there has been a list of the workshops provided in the earlier report by Rhiannon.
Sure.
That is something that will be considered as part of this as well, and it has tried to space those out more. I believe Mrs. Hadley needs to say something.
I'm sorry, Mayor Clark. I had to stop and correct myself. There's only one appendix to this report, and I'm just wondering, Mr. Morris has been referring to options, but I'm wondering how he can...
There's only the one I've proffered in there.
Well, I want to make sure that it is the one that you've...
Appendix has been removed.
Yeah, so the appendix has dropped off because this was a 2-tab
my apologies.
spreadsheet.
I want to make sure that you...
So I'm not quite sure where that has gone. That's not helpful. No, well, I can speak to it, but I can't show it. So it was each of the it's the April, July, and September holidays. There was a. I'll bring that up. So in April, it links in with Easter, so it's community wellbeing and finance and projects that would be joined on the 18th. July, infrastructure and community wellbeing were being joined. And in September, it was infrastructure and community wellbeing again.
So what we've got in front of us is not the alternative with the
no, this is the
family
classic
friendly
edition. I'm not sure where the alternative has gone. I apologise for that. It was there, and now it is not.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps it could lie on the table only for, perhaps you could just put it to one side, and Mr. Morris could go and get that other version, and you could come back to it as the last item before.
Well, I'm not particularly worried about that.
It's a concept.
Yeah, I think everybody seems to agree that being user-friendly over the school holidays was a good thing. If you can just get us a nice coloured copy out each, so we can print it up somewhere. I think if that's where we want to go, that's where we want to go.
Send out the invites.
So when we move the two motions and adopt the 2023 meeting schedule, we're adopting the amended one, which gives our gives us the double up meetings on those 3 months to allow for people with children to have a bit of a break.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I would seek therefore to change my recommendation to be adopt the 2023 school holiday in quote marks meeting schedule.
Sure.
That gives a clear indication of the one that you are adopting.
Yep. Any further discussion around that? There being none, I'll put the two motions in. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. So we now move on to the issue of the honorarium for Mana Whenua. So two reps would like to
We've
withdraw.
got those late minutes.
Sorry? Mayor Clark, there's still the two major late items of the minutes that it's probably useful to get
Oh, sorry, my mistake. Yes.
approved.
So one is the minutes of the meeting of the Infrastructure Committee held on the Tuesday the 6th of December.
Yeah, I'll be happy to move the minutes be confirmed and also move the following recommendations to council, and that is that Councillor Soper and Councillor Skilt are appointed to the CCTV stakeholders group, and that the implementation dates for the 3 school variable speed zones, which are Otatara, James Hargis Senior and Southland Girls High Schools, be 1 February 2023.
Okay. Before I open that up for any discussion on the recommendations you've got there, Councillor, could you just give us some idea of on the likely time frames for the CCTV? I'm not trying to trap you, but I get a lot of questions about that.
Well, I'll pass that over to Trudy.
Oh.
Through you, Mayor Clark, we won't know until we have established the cameras sites, but the original intent from the consultant was it would take us 11 months from start, which we started this in November. So the time frame is 11 months from November, last November 2023. It'll be October 2023 to have resolved.
Is that your undertaking, Rangi?
Look, I'm happy with that. I've had casual conversations with the consultant when he's been down here, and look, the background work that goes into establishing the network that the cameras will sit on is quite complicated, considering a lot of the places where you want to put cameras don't have power. There's only data to limited places, so Wi-Fi systems have to be created. So that backbone is the hard bit, and then once I guess that's established, then sort of a tendering process for proposals can then go underway.
And so yourself and the other 2 councillors, will you deal with the issue of where the cameras are located?
No, look, I'm not on that stakeholder group.
I see.
I've only just kept sort of briefly informed.
Okay.
In case the mayor asks questions.
Because we do have a range of, I guess, public view on where some of these cameras should be.
The critical CBD ones will be done first, according to the $250,000 budget. That's
okay, thank you for that.
Well.
All right, any further questions about the minutes of the Infrastructure Committee or the 2 recommendations to council? No, there's none.
I'll second them, Mayor Clark.
Yeah, thank you. Good to have you on every one at the moment, Leslie. That's really good. So I'll put those 2 recommendations. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. And we've got a second one there, haven't we? And the minutes of the meeting of the Community Wellbeing Committee on the Tuesday the 13th of December. And again, we've got 2 recommendations sitting in there as well.
Happy to move.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. Thank you, Leslie. So any discussion around what you see in the minutes and around the 2 recommendations to council as well, which is around the master plan? There being none, I'll put the acceptance of the minutes and the recommendations that are outlined there in 2 and 3. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. All right, now on to tab 10, which is the honorarium for the mana whenua reps, and I think it would be helpful if we have that discussion without you being there. Thank you. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So this report, as promised, following on from the appointment of the mana whenua representatives to set out their level of honorarium, I have undertaken a survey of South Island-based councils who have similar sort of roles. And as can be seen from the report, there is a wide variance in people's practice and what people do. Christchurch City does not does not currently have any appointments similar to the mana whenua role, but they indicated that if they were to do so, they would be under a policy that they are developing on outside appointees' remuneration. That has not, as I understand it, yet gone to council for them to approve, so I don't have any more information on that, but raise that as a possibility, as something that council could consider should it choose to going forward. From the basis of what I have researched, essentially I've come up with the three options that you see before you. Option A remains the status quo, which was the honoraria paid at the last term. Option B is the current remuneration authority minimum level for a councillor at 38,000, which was the spirit of what was decided at in the last term for these roles. And option C is adopting the DCC or Dunedin City model of a $750 flat fee, but noting that there would actually need to be some work on what a meeting was when considering for the flat fee to be paid, and that would need a bring back to council to ultimately determine. So it's probably enough of a summary from me. I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Yep. And I'll just lead off with that to say that just to thank you for that report, because it was helpful to have a lens over what other people are doing. Certainly from my perspective, I prefer option A, and that's only for the reasoning that I think there needs to be some differential between mana whenua, which is not that they're any different to anybody else that might be represented on our committees, and the level of work that's done by councillors at a base rate. So if I consider our current people that are on there, and I consider Leslie's role on council and all the other committees, so she's put her hand up, there's a significant difference between those two. Work and effort wise, I think that's not to belittle what mana whenua would bring to the table, but I think there's that differential would be helpful. So I'll just open that up and allow people as they work their way around. Darren, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I'd be supporting option B. Option B actually still has a differentiation between standard councillor and I think there's another 4,000 or so, up to, what is it, 42?
A little bit over 42, yeah.
Yeah. That recognises the fact that we as councillors also have those other ad hoc bodies that we're on. The remuneration pool for us was increased this year, and I think it's just in keeping with that sense that the lower end is also an increase for the mana whenua representatives.
Sure. I think it's probably helpful I just work my way around the room, I think, as opposed to waiting for hands to go, because it's good to hear what everybody feels on it. Alex, what's your view on it?
Clark. I too will be supporting option B. I think it's reflective of the amount of effort that our appointees have to put in, and although they may not be appointed to other ad hoc committees, they have the obligation to be consulting with their own mana whenua representatives and their own communities and bringing forward that information so that we have, we're well equipped and they're well equipped as well. So although they may not be on our official committees, I know and we can guarantee that they'll be soliciting with their own as well.
Okay. And just a point of clarification, B refers to 38,642, which is the, I understand, Michael, the current baseline that came from the authority.
It's the minimum payable.
Yeah, but just being mindful that when we're considering this, that we have increased our baseline to just a fraction over 42,000. So, and that doesn't mean we can't still be at 38 for mana whenua. So, yep, Leslie.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I'm also a strong supporter of option B. Not only do I think it's very much in the spirit of the original decision of inviting mana whenua to be part of this council, but I also believe that it reflects the work we're asking those representatives to do. I do agree with the comment that that role will probably grow in a very short time, but we know already that there are requirements on those representatives to liaise with their own communities, and that liaison will only widen, I believe, with mana whenua as well. I'm very comfortable that option B reflects what we said in the spirit of bringing these representatives into our body and acknowledging that they were an important part of the future functioning of this council.
Sure, thank you for that. Nigel?
I'd be for all the reasons previously stated.
Yep. Okay. Trish?
I'd go with option A. I looked at the research that Michael did, and it seems that they're currently receiving quite a payment that's more than in other places. So I would go with option A.
Yep. Rangi?
Can I start with a question first?
Sure, absolutely.
Clarification. Are these positions, do they put forward the representative voice of their particular runanga, or is it their individual voice they bring? That's my question. What are the positions for? Are they two individual people, or are they each of Arawira and Waihopai? The reason I ask that is that previously in an item that was about rangatahi at Splash Palace, we had one of the representatives say that they didn't want the rangatahi there because of the noise and the congestion they cause. And I'm just wondering, I don't think that would be the view of that particular runanga, considering what we're trying to do with rangatahi. So I'm just wondering, and this will affect the way I think about the remuneration. Can anyone advise us on that?
Yeah, I can probably help with that. I've had some discussion with iwi leadership. They represent the two runanga separately. While some may have a view that do they represent mana whenua in those areas, or is it a personal view? Well, you could throw the same question at every council around this table. Are you giving a personal view, or are you reflecting the wider community? And the challenge for us is, how do we know what the community wants on some issues? So I guess just to interrupt you there. Sure.
We were elected as individuals, and they
Sure.
know individually where we stand. Some of us, without
Yep,
a
fully
doubt,
appreciate that.
you get what you pay for.
And the other issue, I guess, is the issue that when we first adopted these two positions, the idea was that they would also consult with Mata Waka, which is the non-mana whenua area of our community. And unfortunately, they're the majority, and I don't think that works all that well, but that's something we need to promote with the iwi leadership who are coming to meet us tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, and sorry, Mayor Clark, my response would have been, it is, as you've just said, it's both. They speak for the runaka, that is their role, that's what they are appointed to do, but as with all people, they also have personal views that will from time to time be shared and is not inappropriate in a forum such as this. But they have accountability back to the runaka for what they say and do.
Yep.
Okay, in that case, option A.
Option A, thank you. Tom?
I think how someone finds their way to this table, whether it be by appointment or by election, is pretty much irrelevant to this discussion anyway. I think what matters is the work of the role and the time commitment. I think in terms of work of the basic role, they certainly have accountability for, talking to their community and, but so do we, actually. We have that accountability too. I think the difference for me is time commitment. And when I look at the previous document, the governance statement, each of us as councillors sit on, typically 3 or 4 committees, subcommittees, community groups, as well as the main committees and council. So there is a difference in time commitment. So I think it is appropriate to think about a delta between the earnings of a councillor and the earnings of a representative for that reason. I could easily be brought to support either A or B. I have, such as my way, I tend to think in terms of D. I always think it was, there's 2 things I think about in terms of a D. One is that we take A and apply RPI to it, so that, because otherwise it's actually a decrease in remuneration. So we might, whether our PI is 6 or 7% or something like that, we could apply that to it, and there is a logic behind that. Another approach might be that we take the 42,000 that members are paid, and say take 90% of that, for example. Actually, both of those option Ds that I've just mentioned, last year's plus RPI or 42,000 times 90%, both end up pretty much the same. They end up 37,000 something. So I think that's maybe rather than just choosing a number, that is maybe a logical way of arriving at a number. I would say though, and I guess I said it before, that if we agree exactly the same remuneration as last triennium, then that actually represents a decrease. So I don't think that would be appropriate.
So, given that we don't have a D at this stage, are you saying B?
Pardon?
Well,
we don't have a D, but
no,
could easily put a B up. But probably if I was forced to choose between the two, because I think it ought to be higher than A to represent inflation, I would choose B.
Okay. Ria.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask just a question? And when we spoke about how the mana whenua can receive their honorarium, there was discussion that this could be and would be discussed about the runanga coming to that party as well.
Sure.
And looking at some type of payment that the council, not only the council share pays, but also runanga, so that we had that, I guess, when I'll say it, that accountability from our representatives, that they were coming forward with the voices and the direction of each of their runanga. A comment that I'd like to make too is that yes, many mata waka do want to be involved, but unfortunately they're not yet here at this table. How that could change in the future, I'm unsure completely of that. But has there been, Michael, any research looking at that option of that payment to be split by runanga and council, so that everyone is equal in that aspect to a degree?
Yeah, so it has been looked at, and it's discounted as not something that, from what I understand, the Ngāi Tahu leadership are interested in doing. I think the only exception ever to that was what happened at Environment Canterbury,
Right.
And that has now changed with the permanent appointment of two Ngāi Tahu representatives to ECAN through legislative change, and they are now treated as councillors and remunerated according to the Remuneration Authority.
So my understanding of ECAN before the legislation was moved is that there was a 50-50 split between ECAN, which is Environment Canterbury, which is a regional authority, and Ngāi Tahu, prior to the legislation changes.
Yes, and that came about largely as a consequence after ECAN's elected members were removed and commissioners were appointed. The Crown at that time appointed Ngāi Tahu commissioners so that they had a voice to be represented at that time. And when, of course, elections returned, Ngāi Tahu wished to continue that voice, and it has developed from there to the Amendment Act you saw that was enacted last year.
Well, that helps clear a little bit of the fog when I was reading through the report and wondering about that lever that could be an option. I do hear what Tom is saying about the options and adding in the RPI, because yes, option A would be actually a slightly less honorarium than what they're receiving now. But I want to point out just as equally that as a new councillor, the workload is quite substantial, depending on your interest in being here for the people of your city. And whilst I can support well and truly the intentions of having mana whenua here, I do think that there is two distinctive ways in which we carry out our roles. One's legislative, one's going that way, I think, down the way, but not currently there. So we don't have an option D, but I wish there was. I wish that Tom, are we capable of moving a motion to add an option D?
Look, I think it's best to work through option A and B at this stage, because I will open it up once we've had the discussion about whether we should have an option that says option A with a cost of living adjustment to it, which would move it up. And whatever the cost of living is at the moment, somewhere probably close to 7%. And where that changes your thinking going forward.
Okay.
I also noted, just for a bit of clarity in my report, Mayor Clark, that I had indicated that it was possible to request a report back to address this partway through the term to allow for the cost of living rises to ensure that relativity was maintained. It could be done now through a motion suggested by Councillors Bond or Campbell, but it can also be done as a bring up at some stage in the next year.
Sure. So, but I'll come back to that in a minute when I've got what people. So which way you're leaning at this stage, Ria? If it's just purely on A or B, I will.
Option A.
Okay, I will open up the other option just to make sure that where that lands with people. Alan.
Me. Well, I think option A, and why I think option A, well, one of the reasons is there's many reasons, but one of them is the different bits and pieces that councillors do as opposed to the mana whenua reps, and the other reason is that I believe that everybody has a chance to vote in local body elections, and then so the issue of appointees is an extra thing and a burden, cost is a burden to our ratepayers.
Sure.
If it was split half the way between the Renangas and the council, I'd probably think of it a little bit differently perhaps, but at this stage it's option A.
Okay. Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Option C is not really an option because there's no dollar figure mentioned, like $750 per meeting. Like, could there be 2 meetings per month? That would be 18,000 per year. Or are we talking more or less, or is it going to be closer to 30 or what?
So, Councillor Kate, there are, in the report, there are some scenarios around what that could look like as a 3 meeting, because there's the 2 committee meetings that mana whenua are appointed to, plus the council meeting they're entitled to attend. There was a figure. 27,000. Thank you, Councillor Soper, and 36,000 if it was the 4 meetings each year, as they mana whenua are entitled to attend risk and assurance and finance and projects. So that's why I'd indicated that there would actually need to be some more work on what is a meeting, so that we had an actual indication of what mana whenua were attending, because that, as Mayor Clark has just mentioned, the long-term plan workshops are also coming that we would expect them to be a part of. That was going to be on top of potentially council meetings. Not every workshop can fit into a council meeting day, so there would need to be some significant work to agree what is a meeting. That's the only reason there isn't a finite figure sitting there, but this is on a rough rule of thumb: 3 meetings 27,000 and 4 meetings 36,000, and Bluff Community Board for Pania Coat is on top of that again.
So I guess
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got another couple of comments to make. I believe that we should have a president of mana whenua reps here, but not as close to the earnings that the elected members have got, because they haven't had to face up to the public. They're appointed here, and I believe that anyone around the table here that should go anywhere near the councillor's rate of pay should only get half that amount, or around about that figure. But a question is, do they just represent the Invercargill City and Bluff area?
Yes.
So that's where the funding comes from to pay them at this stage?
Correct.
Okay. During the last council meeting, we had a debate on Three Waters, and one of the mana whenua reps was more concerned about the people that were living in Wairio, Nightcaps and Ojai area, more concerned about them than our local people about the Three Waters. So that is not representing the Invercargill citizens or ratepayers.
So I can talk to that for you, Peter.
Thank you.
Certainly at the beginning of the year when I appointed the chairs, and particularly Rangi and Darren, who are the chairs of the two big committees, I made it clear that that's not an issue for Evelyn to worry about. It's an issue for us as chairs to manage that. If any member starts to stray off into an area which is a historical one or something that's not relevant to the city, then as chairs we need to pull back that discussion so it doesn't continue to go on. And so I'm hoping that what I've seen in the last couple of months is we haven't gone off into the comments you had were from a previous term.
Okay.
So at this stage, my quick count is 6-5 in favour of them staying where they are. But before I finish, I'd certainly like to go back to the ones that are in the B category, and just say to yourself, would you feel more comfortable? Well, I'm not trying to manipulate this because we'll end up having a show of hands anyway, without necessarily recording who goes which way. Just so we're clear, would it be better for those that have opted for B if we had a cost of living adjustment to that initial figure of 34,667? And how would you...
I've done the calculation. It's
sure.
$37,091. That would be, that's CPI at 7%, which is where it was last month.
Yep.
Well, can you repeat that figure, please?
37,000.
37091.
Yeah.
So this pushes between A and B a little bit. Yeah. So again, I know this is a bit of a drawn out process, but we want to get it right. I don't want to go around the table again, but if anybody's feeling uncomfortable about that scenario, now's the time to be saying it, and I will go around the table if it is. Yep, Alex.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I just really am going to put in another pitch for option B rather than option D.
Yep.
The Remuneration Authority does an extensive amount of work in determining what the base amount of remuneration should be for the base level of work that any councillor puts in. Our mana whenua reps do that mahi at the base level. They definitely come up to that. Another thing we need to remember is that we are inviting participation from mana whenua in a colonial framework to begin to take steps towards fulfilling te tiriti. Begrudgingly paying them substantially less for a similar workload to our base level is not in good faith. I understand the metric of trying to add adjustment to what they were paid last year, but that's not how we were measured. We were measured by the Remuneration Authority, and the Remuneration Authority has determined that for us. I think that we should listen to the Remuneration Authority and let them and their research dictate what that base level should be. And just on Councillor Kett, they do certainly face up to the public as well. There's been multiple articles where they get dragged through the mud for having their own personal views and stating their personal views at the table as well. So I don't think that they're free of that public accountability.
That's your opinion.
Yep. So don't want comments about other people's opinions. We'll just let them express. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to agree with everything that Alex has said and try not to repeat it, but I am going to say something that I said at the original debate.
Yep.
Nā tau roro, nā taku roro, ka ora ai te iwi. With your food basket and my food basket, the people will thrive. We invited mana whenua to this table as part of the partnership under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the founding document and covenant that this country is based on. We invited those people to be at the table as equal partners because it was important to us and in fact the entire country that was shown, that partnership approach was shown, and we could make a small contribution to that. I'm therefore somewhat horrified to be having this discussion, and I'll just emphasise what Councillor Crackett has said very carefully. The Remuneration Authority made some very deep research into the base responsibilities for which they came to a base salary. We discussed fully when we invited mana whenua reps to this table the base salary and the fact that we were ready to agree that we were inviting people with the expectation that they were doing what amounted to the base work. I am not comfortable with saying that we will take the old base that has been replaced by the Remuneration Authority and find some device to add or subtract from it to arrive at a figure that is somewhere in the vicinity of closer to the base Remuneration Authority. For me, it is quite simple. We invited a partnership. We said we would partake in that partnership, and I would like to see us agree to that. So I also very strongly make the case again that option B is what I am comfortable with and believe is what this council should be committed to. Thank you.
Right, Michael, just to clarify a couple of things. That base rate of 34,000 last year was not what councillors were paid, was it? Just as this year, we've got 38 as the baseline, or 38 and 642 as the baseline, but we've been able to move around the figures within the overall fund itself to now create a one that's slightly over 42. So even if we went to option B, we are still going to be at least $4,000 short of what a councillor says. So I guess in some ways for me, it's when we say we want equality, we've never had equality, and even if we went to option B, we still wouldn't have equality. Am I right in assuming that?
It's a hard one to answer, Mayor Clark, but in short, the answer is yes, because that was the minimum that was set by the Remuneration Authority. Council was always and has always been able to determine that minimum allowable that it's decided to pay councillors who don't have any other duties. And each time that has been higher than the minimum set by the authority. And just as an example of that, I know in Dunedin City, they had 2 councillors on the minimum allowable for their council and proposed that to the Remuneration Authority, and the authority rejected it and said that's not appropriate, it's too low, which is interesting given that the authority itself set the minimum allowable level. But it's just an example of the authority ultimately is the decider of that, but councillors get to determine their own minimum base rates.
Because it was my recollection last time that when I was a councillor, I was on about 38, or just a little bit shy of that, even though the minimum was actually set at 34.5.
Yes, so the minimum last time was 34, and the council determined that the minimum paid to a councillor without any other duties was about 38,000.
Sure. Alex?
Just to expand on that, Your Worship, you're quite right, and I see you are following your logic in that even if we do decide for option B, there's still a substantial difference between that and whatever we're considering a base level councillor rate. But then that recognises what Councillor Bond had said and the workload of incoming councillors and the others, and like yourself said about Councillor Soper and, you know, many of us opting for other additional committees. So there is a differentiation there, I acknowledge that, but it is at the level that the Remuneration Authority has deemed appropriate, rather than a figure that we've decided to wing up. Thanks.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but I, from what I understand, is the Remuneration Authority doesn't set mana whenua type honorariums.
Yeah, correct.
Our issue is that when we appointed them in the last term, we appointed them to the base rate of what the Remuneration Authority said was the base rate. We didn't appoint them to the rate that we are actually on ourselves.
Correct.
Yeah, Rangi.
Oh, sorry, Trish was before.
No,
Oh, okay. Look, I just want to go back the truck up and ask, what did we originally offer the remuneration? The mana whenua remuneration for a start. Did we offer that minimum base rate?
Correct.
Originally, or did we offer something lower, and it was turned down.
Well, we had a range of options last time round, and I think from my memory, and Michael might clarify if we didn't, we got to quite a tense meeting because we had mana whenua present during that discussion, which wasn't helpful. And they clearly felt they wouldn't be paid less because we had quite a range last time. If you can remember, there was a figure of 100% of the base rate, 75% and 50%. The 50% potentially with a Ngāi Tahu top up, and we ended up landing on 100%, which meant 100% is the 34,500.
So okay, and knowing that, then I think what the remuneration authority has set for this council has absolutely nothing to do with it whatsoever. We've conveniently chosen that figure, okay, but I don't believe the Rem authority, with its pool of money that it gives council to divvy up, because this money comes out of rates effectively, as straight up costs. So look, I could live with a cost of living increased 35, but that rate has nothing to do with the Rem authority or recognising anything. Sorry, I'm very happy with option A.
And I accept that, but just need to be clear that on the 34,667, that was the base rate from the authority for the last term, and we agreed to pay that. We didn't pluck that out of the air. It was I can quite recall that we had 50, 75 and 100% on the table, and we decided 100%, so it wasn't 100% of just some mystical number. It was 100% of the minimum rate to be paid under the authority.
Correct.
So if we don't pay that this time and keep it on that, we're sort of deviating away from that expectation, and I'm quite happy with that, but I just want people to be quite clear on that. Any further discussion? Yeah, Trish.
I think what we did with our coming to a decision about our funding was a very good system. There was a process that we did, and that's how we decided on what was going to happen. And I think what Councillor Campbell is suggesting is probably a similar way for this, so that instead of us having to have discussions all the time, there's a process that we go through, that we add the cost, whatever it is, the 7%, and based on the money that they're currently getting. Yep. And I don't know where my vote is there, but I definitely think that that's a reasonable way for us to look at it.
Yep. So working through this process, then I just want to talk now to the A option people, so you can refresh my memory who they are. I know some of them. Are you open to a CPI adjustment of 7%?
Yes.
Rangi, you are. Tom?
Personally, Chair, I think that's fair. I think while we, the roles and duties are very similar, and as I said before, I don't think it makes any difference how they arrive at this table.
Yeah.
But the workload is clearly different, and with apologies to Councillor Soper for choosing her, I just happened to notice her name first. Councillor Soper is in 11 additional committees, trusts and joint committees, 11, which we do not ask mana whenua to participate in. So there is a significant difference in workload. Sure. So I think on that basis, I don't have a problem with there being a differential between the two.
Sure. Rhea, were you A as well, weren't you?
I was A with
sure.
a index of 7%.
Sure. Alan?
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Yep. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not happy with option A, and I'm not happy with option B, because, as I said earlier, they're far, far too close to what elected members get. Far, far too close. But in saying that, I'm sure I was not elected here to sit on the fence. I've got to make a decision. I'll reluctantly go for option A, even though I'm still not in favour of option A, but I'll go for option A.
Well, let me make comment to that. I respect somebody that speaks out of alignment with other people, and I think it's okay for you to vote the other way. If you know the numbers that are on the table now, if you vote away from option A, I think it's too high, we will get to 5 in favour of option A with a CPI, and 5 an option B, and I'll end up with a casting vote. And I'm happy to take that if it gives you the right to say that you're not happy with option A.
Well, I'm not happy with option A or B.
Yep.
But looks as though I'll go for option A because it's the cheaper option.
What I'm suggesting to you, if you don't want to vote on that, if you want to abstain because you're not happy with either, then that won't interfere with the result at the end of the day. But it gives you the option to say what you want to say. So that's a choice I'm giving you.
Thank you.
What does that mean? I can't write down thank you. You've got the option of A or nothing, I guess.
So you've got your numbers for option A, you're telling me?
I do have.
Okay. I will not be voting.
Okay. Darren, you're
Sorry, I
looking...
think the councillor's confused. Are we talking A or A plus?
Yes.
He doesn't want either.
Right.
So that leaves us with the options of A plus, the CPI, or B, and by my assessment, they're about $1,500 apart. And that looks to me as though it'll be a 5-5 split.
Only got 4 for a B.
I've got 5. Want to run around the table again? 1, 2, 3.
4 Bs in a row.
Who else? Have I got this wrong?
Mr. Mayor, I think that
Councillor Boyle was
Show of hands.
Okay. Okay.
it's appropriate that you've discussed it. It's appropriate that there's a motion to which
Sure.
you can
Yep.
just debate.
Yep. Okay. Well,
Just a question of clarity on that.
Sure.
Increase of the CPI. Look, the councils, and this will be through the mayor towards you, Mike, is the increase for the base rate for council's remuneration does not increase every year. In fact, it can go for a few years without increase. Is that correct?
The authority makes its determination, and it may determine to have no increase for a council at any given time. It is unusual for there to be no increase.
Each year?
The authority looks at it each year, and generally there isn't it looks at the pool for the start of each term.
Right. Just realising the last increase for this council was quite a significant one.
Most councils had a decent.
Is that right?
Most councils had an increase.
Okay, so it wasn't just a catch up from lack of. Right.
So just to make it clear on what you're alluding to, Rangi, which is if we start building in a 7% CPI, does it continue to go on each year? If we build it in, it would be my recommendation that option A just has a dollar figure. And we know it includes a CPI adjustment, but if you start putting in CPI, then it becomes an expectation every year that you get a CPI adjustment. Given that this is a one-off, this is not what's determined by the authority, because it could leave the door open for mana whenua to say we want a CPI adjustment every year, regardless of whether the councils get one or not.
Mr. Mayor, I can see that Mr. Day wishes to make a point, and I think he wanted to ask, is there an adjustment by the Remuneration Authority annually, Michael?
Yeah, the other Michael.
Thank you, through yourself, Chair. Just a matter of correction, the CPI is running at 7.2% as it currently stands, just when you're discussing it.
Yeah, so the Remuneration Authority does issue determinations each year.
Thank you. Sometimes there's a movement,
Sometimes there's not. I don't think there has been any movement for the last couple of years until the Tranium elections.
Thank you.
I took it, sorry, through you, Chair, and to Michael. I actually calculated, I looked at it up until the date of the election for the previous 12 months. I presume you've looked at it current. So if it was backdated, and if it was backdated to the election, then 7% would probably, I think, would be the appropriate amount, because that is the CPI as of that date. But whether it's 7 or 7.2,
I think you would need to backdate to the 1st of November, the inaugural meeting when mana whenua were reappointed, just for a matter of procedural correctness. Is there, Mr. Mayor, I'm noticing that there isn't currently an option D, which is the status quo plus the CPI.
We're waiting for someone to move something.
Yep. So I'll move to bring this to a head that option A removes the status quo and just reflects $37,091, which is a 7% CPI on top of that figure, but doesn't record that it's CPI, just the flat rate. Because if you do put the wording in, there'll be an expectation ongoing.
I'll second that.
Second that, Trish.
37,091.
So we've 91, and just take out that original figure. Oh yeah.
And remove status quo.
Okay. Right, any final discussion on this before we put that motion? Okay, I'll put the motion that we adopt option A, if I have a second for that, which is Trish. And helpful to show a show of hands, and that's not for recording purposes, because there is some degree of risk with this, just so I make sure I've got the numbers right. And I'll take Peter, you as an abstainer if that's what you wish as well. So just all those in favour of option A that's now been amended?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Thank you. So that's carried, and taking Peter as an abstainer. All right, thank you very much for that.
Mr Mayor, I'd like my vote recorded against, please.
Certainly, yeah. Darren as well. Alex? Yep. Any? It was just the 3, wasn't it? 3 opposed. Yep, that's fine. So that's us done on the open part of the agenda. We now need to move into public excluded. Thank you, Darren and Leslie. This is where you nod your head, Leslie. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So we just work through that part of the agenda. Thank you, Logan.